Wicket and I'm from the King's Church in Halifax. Generally around general election times or elections of various varieties, we hold hustings events. Obviously that isn't possible this year, but we have a very important election coming up on the 6th of May for the role of the West Yorkshire Mayor. A newspaper article last week said that only 3% of those asked could name any one of the candidates. So we thought it'd be a good idea to give space to each of the candidates that are standing in order for them to introduce themselves and to share some of their vision and plans if they get elected in the role of West Yorkshire Mayor. We have invited all of the candidates. We've had apologies from Tracy Brabin, who is representing the Labour and Co-Operative Party. And we have not heard from Waj Ali, who is representing Reform UK, and Thérèse Hirst, who is representing the English Democrats. But it's great that we have the rest of the candidates with us on this Zoom call. So the Mayor of West Yorkshire, who are they and what will they do? From their website, it says the Mayor of West Yorkshire will have a similar role to the mayors of Greater Manchester, the Liverpool City region and other regions in England with devolution deals. They will work alongside the leaders of the councils in West Yorkshire, which is Bradford, Calderdale, Kirklees, Leeds and Wakefield, to help make West Yorkshire an even better place to live, work, visit and do business, which sounds good to me. The functions of the Mayor will be around transport, housing and planning, finance and policing and crime. So we have 4 of the candidates here and we're going to ask that each of them in around 7 minutes maximum introduce themselves, say why they are standing for the role of West Yorkshire Mayor, highlight some of the key plans that they will implement if they are successfully elected, share their vision for West Yorkshire and finish by talking about their favourite West Yorkshire place. So we're going to go in alphabetical order and we will start with Bob Buxton, who is the candidate representing the Yorkshire Party. So Bob, over to you.
Thank you, Paul, and thank you for the invitation. It's always an honour to speak at hustings, and a credit to my colleagues who are here today honouring your invitation to do that. I think every candidate really should be present to hear your questions as much as anything else. So I'm originally from North Yorkshire. I lived in West Yorkshire for 24 years. In that time, I've lived in Leeds, I've worked in Bradford, Wakefield and Shipley. So what professional experiences have I gathered during that time that I can bring to the role of West Yorkshire Mayor? Well, I've got a PhD in engineering, I've got experience with transport, with traffic flow modelling. I've written a foundation degree in renewable energy, and I've worked a lot in education, secondary, further education, university and adult education, including engineering apprentices, which I currently teach. And I've had to rearrange my lessons today to be able to be with you for at least half the time. I apologise, I've got a lesson at 2:30, which is unavoidable. So professional experience is an important thing, and it's more important than political experience. Political experience was all that anyone needed. There wouldn't be any problems with politics. I want to explain today how I'm going to use my professional experience to get things done. Let's talk about transport first of all. So when I go to work in the morning, it's only 6.3 miles. But it takes me a good while. I leave at 6:45 and I don't arrive till 8:15. Why is that? Well, I don't drive. I've got to walk up a half an hour to the station. There is a short train ride, but it's not a perfect route for me at all. Another half an hour walk at the other end before getting to work. And even worse, the other night I was at a hustings in Bradford. It was fairly close to the centre of Bradford. At 10 p.m, there was no public transport way of getting home. So thank you to Andrew Cooper for giving me a lift. And he's got the second choice vote. And even if it hadn't been 10 o'clock at night, there would have been some options, but it would have been a bizarre combination of buses and trains. Really, really inefficient, prohibitively expensive. So if we're going to get people out of their cars, we're going to meet environmental targets, we're going to make people's lives better. And if we're going to improve productivity, which is 9% lower than the rest of the UK, all over Yorkshire, by the way, not just in the West, then we need a proper rapid mass transit system for West Yorkshire. I want to use my engineering experience, transport experience, to help make that happen. It will not be a simple process. The Tories are unfortunately cutting various transport projects, downgrading them. Bradford's new station being downgraded, next it'll be cancelled, I imagine. And Labour hasn't delivered on transport in West Yorkshire at all. Who remembers the brilliant trolleybus scheme that was going to bring us into the 21st century? Those are not the parties to do this. It's someone who actually has a background in engineering who can make this happen, can make the business case and the political case so overwhelmingly good, the government daren't refuse it. If they refuse it, they'll then lose seats. Also, in terms of transport, lots of other things. In London, bus passes can be used 24/7. Well, why not in West Yorkshire then? We need to have reduction in prices across all bus and rail services with smart tap and pay. It does mean building towards a franchise model for the whole of West Yorkshire. There are no brick walls. If you go past a certain border at the moment, you get absolutely caned with extra prices. That shouldn't happen. That's not what we want at all. We need more park and rides. We need to think about those. How are we going to integrate those with the future mass transit system? The Parkway station for the airport, Leeds Bradford Airport, for example, is going to be obsolete if we get a mass transit system. Let's build for the future. Let's make that a direct link, which will be part of that network. And all over West Yorkshire, let's really think about how we're going to integrate this lighter rail mass transit with existing heavy rail to get the best efficiency. And lots of other countries do this. It's not blue sky thinking at all. We also need a better fuels, biofuels, a good improvement to electric buses. Already got them in York, but not in West Yorkshire, behind there as well. Better planning for cycleways. Some cycleways are really good and successful, others not so. Let's try and make them more of a separate network to the roads rather than trying to integrate things which are not the same. Safer walkways as well, sensible pedestrianisation that doesn't cause gridlock. These are things that people want. We also need, in terms of crime, we need to tackle drink driving, we need to tackle speeding, drugs driving, all those things, unlicensed, uninsured drivers. We need to tackle those things. So if I'm elected, I'll appoint Dan Woodlock, who lives in Dewsbury, worked in Halifax in the past, as my Deputy Mayor for Police and Crime, somebody with experience in criminology with the British Transport Police, someone with expertise there to make the roads and streets safer. And moving on, I also want to talk about housing. We need greener homes. Again, with my experience with green energy, I believe I'm the right person to do that. We need subsidies for turbines, for solar energy, for insulation. We've had some of these things in the past, but we've had mishandling of these schemes, particularly by central government. Some progress in local government, to be fair, but these things aren't getting better. They're not becoming more available. In many areas, they're becoming less available. That's the wrong step. For business as well, with larger buildings, we need these things to be available much more than they are now. Standard of housing, the passive standard of housing is something to aspire towards, but not be a slave to, because if you follow it exactly, in terms of having smaller homes as well, you'll end up being paralysed, not being able to actually deliver anything at all. So aspire towards as much as you can without things becoming impossible to build. And moving on to education. So my experience, I've written a foundation degree in renewables, also written courses in engineering, courses with units in health science, lots of different things. I know the power of education, the power of being able to retrain in key areas. We need to reinvent West Yorkshire's economy after the pandemic. With my experience, I'm the right person to do that. Give people of all qualification levels a chance to retrain in the key areas, certainly including health. Give a chance to make a fresh start. I'll finish off by speaking about the devolution deal itself. Devolution we've got isn't very good. The Tories have found us off with a weak devolution deal. The budget is £16 per person per year. That's all. Labour signed off on it because they just can't say no to the Tories at the moment. Now, my objective will be to make the most of it. Make the most of soft power and limited powers, which we have, that do fit my experience as it happens, and show how powerful devolution can be. By setting a good example with limited powers and funding, make the case for a proper regional body for Yorkshire, a far more democratic body than just electing a mayor and a combined authority which is stitched together with some unelected people as well, council leaders. So to make that more powerful Yorkshire, stronger Yorkshire, with proper fairer devolution, same sort of style as Scotland has. And finally, my favourite place in West Yorkshire, last thing you've asked me, I found this really difficult. I'm an outdoors person, I love the countryside. I can talk about the various canal walks that we have down by the River Aire or Rawdon Building, which is very close to me, where I often take the dog. So it could be any one of those as my favourite place. So thank you very much for the invitation, and thank you for letting me have such a long talk. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Next, we're going to pass on to Andrew Cooper, who is representing the Green Party.
Hello, and thanks for inviting me today. And I'll just say a bit about myself first, I guess, and my background. I've worked in the energy efficiency and renewable energy sector for 22 years, and I represented the Renewable Energy Association to government, and have met with government ministers trying to get changes to policy affecting renewables and energy efficiency policy as well. I used to be the Energy Efficiency Policy Manager for the Yorkshire Humber Assembly before it was abolished a number of years ago. So quite apart from my political background, I've got a professional background in energy efficiency and a qualification in energy advice. And I used to manage the Energy Efficiency Advice Centre for South and West Yorkshire. So I'm not a full-time professional politician all my life. I've actually got a background in both the public and private sectors. I started off my career in the public sector looking after estates of council houses and dealing with people's day-to-day problems on an officer level. And it was looking at that made me think some of the time, and I did come across councillors at that time, and I thought we could be better served. I think, and so that was one of the reasons that I first stood for council in 1999 when I first got elected. And got to say, it's not necessarily easy. It certainly wasn't at the time to get elected as a Green politician. But one of the things that I did really believe was that if I did get elected, if I did manage to beat the odds, if I did manage to beat the big parties, that it would be more meaningful, because it would have been harder to do, and to get that support, to be able to get people to support me. Good things must have happened along the way to make that happen. And so I would never change my political allegiance, because just for the convenience of being elected. It makes it more meaningful being elected in that way. And so I have been elected. I've been elected and re-elected 6 times now as a councillor. And every now and again, the Labour Party, who are our principal opposition, will put loads and loads of effort in. Lots of activists will appear from outside the area to come in to try to unseat me. In fact, once they got an old Coronation Street star, well, not old as in herself, but Tracy Brabin, who was brought in as a Labour supporting actress to come and campaign on Labour's behalf against me, which fortunately was unsuccessful. Yeah, that was interesting. So as a councillor, one of the things I have managed to achieve, there's a number of things I could point to, but one of the biggest ones was getting the UK's first ever free insulation scheme, the Kirklees Warm Zone, which insulated 50,000 homes. And it was a Green Party amendment to the scheme, which actually made it the first free scheme in the country. And that won national awards and things. Lots of parties have claimed credit for it, but it's the fact that it was free and that it was a Green Party amendment which really made it take off. And thousands and thousands of households saved money off their fuel bills. It was more money back in their pockets. It addressed fuel poverty, and it gave people healthier homes to live in. A real example where green policies have a very, very positive social impact. And so that was really important to me, to actually make green politics relevant to people's everyday lives. So looking at the West Yorkshire mayoral role, that offers some huge opportunities. The policing role has been mentioned, the fact that policing now comes under the West Yorkshire mayoral role. And the Green Party have chosen my colleague Hawaran Hussain, who's a former Green Party councillor in Bradford, 16 years experience, and a former Deputy Lord Mayor of Bradford. She's our nominee for that. And as a Muslim woman, she will bring a perspective to policing which would be really valuable. And I want to see more action on things like speed limits, weight limit enforcement. I want people to really take note of those things, and not just to be signs that people ignore. And so I want to see a lot more on that. There's a whole host of other things as well that I can't go through. The Green Building Fund is something that I have been putting forward. I've been frustrated on my own council by the public sector and social housing projects which have been brought forward under the government's very poor building regulation standards. And I've stressed the passive house standard or equivalent as being the way that we actually want to go, or equivalent. And so that's an area which would actually see fuel bills reduced by up to around 80 or 90%. And that means, again, more money in people's pockets, but it also has a direct impact on climate change. And it would add about 5% to the cost of building social housing and public sector projects. And so that would have a tangible difference. It would mean effectively that we would have our own version of the building regulations within West Yorkshire, which would be also a national leader, which could then lead to national change. So I don't just look at West Yorkshire, I think about the things that we could do which could make us pathfinding and take us forward. Another big element of what the Mayor is about is transport. And the West Yorkshire Transport Fund has 880 million, of which 675 million is spent on roads. And so I'd like to flip that to get that into public transport, active travel, the things which actually reduce carbon emissions and make those viable options for so many more people.
30 seconds, please, Andrew.
So the most important thing now is to vote for me as your first choice for West Yorkshire Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Next, we have Stuart Galton, who is representing the Liberal Democrats.
Thanks, Paul, and thank you for inviting me today, along with the other candidates. I was going to start off with a little bit of a CV to say how long I've been an elected local councillor, because I've been elected 23 years. I'm not sure if that beats Andrew. Yeah. But as far as I'm concerned, experience can go either way. Sometimes you can spend 23 years doing something really badly, or you can spend those 23 years as just one long learning experience and making sure that you add value wherever you can to make sure that decisions which have been taken badly in the past get taken better in the future. And one of the things which is so key about devolution, and one of the reasons why I wanted to be involved as your first elected West Yorkshire Mayor, is that decisions taken closer to the communities that they're meant to be benefiting are better decisions. And we need to make sure that more of those decisions are taken in West Yorkshire or in Yorkshire as a whole. I would love to have a devolved Yorkshire Assembly, but of course, small steps, because at the moment the government isn't listening and we have to work with the system that we've got. And there is so much that we can do, so much potential that could be achieved by people in our area being empowered to deliver better outcomes for them and their families. Society is built upon communities, and unfortunately, when too many decisions are taken centrally in places like Westminster, those communities aren't enabled to deliver what they can achieve for the people that live within them. As a Liberal Democrat Mayor, we put community at the very heart of our politics. All of our campaigning is street-based. We deliver leaflets, we knock on doors. And the reason why you do that is because if you understand what people's aspirations are, then you can make sure that those things are accommodated within what you deliver as a leader in charge. And one of the things that's important to me as a leader is that I will be listening to not just my own activists and party members. And I think that's part of the problem with people who miss events such as this. Hustings are there so that you can communicate and discuss issues with people who you haven't met before. And those people that you haven't met before sometimes have some really good ideas that you might want to take forward. So that's why we've made the effort. But for me as mayor, I want to make sure that every community has access to decision makers, that we're not excluding some people because those communities have voted the wrong way according to the politician in charge. We need to make sure that everyone's got equal access. and that we're not just taking part in some municipal beauty contest, as happens so often when a fund is created in Westminster by the government in charge, and then they make all the local authorities and decision makers line up and compete to have access to a pot of funding for a particular issue. We think people should be able to have that by right. And we think actually that there should be the opportunity to have your own fiscal powers to enable things to happen. I'm very disappointed that Matthew Robinson and other candidates have expressed a wish that there should never ever be any new taxation involved with decisions being made on a Westminster footprint. I think people appreciate that public services are what get delivered through taxation. What they want is for that taxation to be spent wisely and to be spent effectively. And that's one of the reasons why, as Mayor, I will be doing things a lot differently. In terms of transport, at the moment, there are hundreds of millions of pounds going through the West Yorkshire Combined Authority to invest in transport schemes across our area. But too often, those transport schemes are actually designed to benefit private bus companies with no effort made whatsoever to get some kind of commensurate benefit for the people, the passengers, the commuters that they're meant to be benefiting. I want to turn that balance around so that the passenger is in charge. I want to deliver 15-minute neighbourhoods so that what we've learned through COVID can actually be enhanced, and our economic growth can be based in lots of smaller communities, high streets and town centres, maximising their potential as economic incubators, instead of every penny being spent on flash city centre schemes and getting people to and fro in a 9-to-5 commute into places like Leeds City Centre. Leeds City Centre has had its fair share of investment. It's now time to get it out into the wider community across West Yorkshire. In terms of parts of the economy which are also overlooked, as Mayor, I will also ensure that our rural economy gets a real attention paid to it, because this is the area where we can make really big impacts in tackling our climate change commitments. Each council in West Yorkshire has committed to be carbon neutral by 2030. The West Yorkshire Combined Authority wishes to be carbon neutral by 2038. The government will wait till 2050. We need to make sure that what we invest locally gets us the best outcomes possible in terms of the climate as soon as possible. And we need to do that by working with people. Not everything can be delivered from the public sector itself. We need to work with the private sector. We need to work with farmers so that we can get that renewable energy generation in our rural areas, that we get our internal home tourism industry ramped up properly so that more people can have staycations, and that the money which is spent in tourism actually gets reinvested into our economy. And we also need to look at our food miles and our food security. If there are going to be hold-ups at the ports for things like fresh produce, shouldn't we be trying to grow more of it ourselves? We need to make sure that while we wait for the government to give our farmers a decent deal post-Brexit, that we're actually enabling them to participate in our own local food economy. And that's what I will be doing as your elected mayor. In terms of transport as well, somebody has already alluded to the fact that Bradford wants their own city centre station. We need to focus on the fact that Transpennine connectivity is what matters to us. And actually, we've been let down by Conservative and Labour, local and national leaders alike, by the obsession which has taken place on HS2. You'll definitely not get that through me. I'm there for Transpennine connectivity to get our economy moving. Thank you.
Thank you, Stuart. And finally, over to Matthew Robinson, who is representing the Conservatives.
Thanks, Paul, and thanks, Neil. I'm glad I could be with you today, and I think these hustings are incredibly important because they give a chance for voters to hear from the candidates themselves. And many of us have given up a lot of time to make sure we are listening to voters, and I think that's an important part of leading. It isn't just about decision making, it is about listening to. Now, on the 6th of May, West Yorkshire will elect a new mayor for the region. Now, some want it to be a different geography, some think it's a waste of money, others aren't sure it should be happening at all. But there will be a mayor elected on the 6th of May. There will be somebody who's in charge. And really what we want it to be is somebody that works for the voters and works for the people of West Yorkshire and the people's priorities. And that's why I don't want to start unpicking the devolution deal as it is. What I want to do is make sure that we use the powers that we have, we make sure we deliver for people, and we build trust in devolution and rebuild trust in local government. Because far too often we hear people say, I've got no idea what you do and you don't deliver, and what use will a mayor be? Well, if we can prove that a mayor will make a difference for people, that a mayor is a use, that a mayor can get people a better deal, then that will increase their trust in politics, and it will increase just what we can deliver from any party across West Yorkshire. Now, I'm born and raised in West Yorkshire. I work in the region, live in the region. I think it's important that we have a mayor who lives in the region as well, and make sure that they're based here and spend every night that they can here in the region, and they're not lobbying down in Parliament, and they get back here to be based in West Yorkshire, because we want somebody who can work for and fight for our region. I'm a councillor in Leeds, and I've been a councillor for 11 years. And that experience of local government, I think, really matters. It matters for how you work with other councils, but it matters for how you work with central government too, and being an honest broker and being a strong voice to government. And I've shadowed the resources brief on the council, scrutinising millions of pounds worth of budgets to make sure that we get the best deal. And I want the new West Yorkshire Mayor to be transparent, open and accountable, not just in our accounting, but our decision making too. Myself, I've worked as well. I've had a proper job, and I've worked for education charities and worked in the third sector. I've worked with schools and education trusts. And one of my big motivators in politics is social mobility. It's why I work for those charities. It's what I want to do. I want to see people's life chances improved. I want to see the next generation have it better than the generation before them. I want to see it so that everybody has the opportunity to succeed. So what does that mean if I'm elected mayor? Well, I want to make sure that we create decent local jobs and new apprenticeships. I want to work with business, and we'll have a new mayor's business board where business can have a direct line into the mayor's office, and the mayor can hear directly from business and speak directly to business too. It will mean that they can raise their challenges and their concerns, but we can also talk about where we can best invest, where the growth industries are, and how the mayoralty and the combined authority and our councils can help deliver. I want to improve growth as a region, and that means growth for small businesses too. Small businesses are the backbone of our economy. So many people work in that sector and that industry, and I'm so pleased that so many of them have come back to work this week and come back safely in the hospitality industry, the retail industry, and others, because it really does matter. And it gives people work gives people a great sense of purpose, but it's great for our region too. I want to make sure that we create more green jobs, and that includes regenerating our towns. That means towns across Yorkshire as well. It cannot be all about our big cities. If we are focused on Leeds city centre schemes, then we're failing to deliver for Keighley, for Cleckheaton, for Calderdale, or for wherever across the region. We need to make sure that everybody feels bought in. And I'll do it without introducing new taxes. I don't think that this is the time to be introducing taxes. I don't think it's right when we've gone through this COVID pandemic to put a big tax in on new people. And if people want to bring in taxes, they should be straight with people and say what those taxes will be. I've been very honest from the start and said, I don't believe that we should be bringing in these new taxes. There is £1 billion in the budget, and we should make sure every penny is spent well before we ask people for £1 more. I'll recruit more police and make sure that we use our extra powers and we have better equipment so that we can focus on tackling crime. And that means antisocial behaviour, knife crime and gang crime, which are particularly pertinent for younger people too, and the younger generation who get caught up in gang crime and can be exploited. I think we need to be tackling that. And we also need to be making sure that people are safe in their own homes. So burglary and theft is dealt with, and there is a response from the police, and people feel that they are seeing visible policing. And that means actually making our streets safer. And we do that through giving the police the right equipment, through improving schemes like Farm Watch, through making sure that frontline officers, particularly those who are serving in some of the highest crime areas, are equipped with tasers, because too many of our police get assaulted. It means we can keep the public safe, and it means we can keep our police safe too. And in Leeds, I'll make sure that we have an exit strategy for the managed zone. Those who don't know, who might be watching me, the managed zone is in Leeds, and it is a red light district that's there, where far too many women who are on addictions are exploited. We need to end that. That is something that should have been ended a long time ago. And we need to be clear with communities that that will not stand here in West Yorkshire. And Transport. Transport's going to get more than a facelift. I can give you that. We need a new mass transit system, and it needs to be connecting across the region. It cannot just be communities in Leeds and Bradford. It needs to make sure that Wakefield, Kirklees and Calderdale are all bought into this too. And it's about building confidence in our transport network as well. It's making sure that it's reliable and accessible, that we have better, more flexible ticketing, that it's easier to get your tickets, and that you're not having to chop and change tickets 3 or 4 times if you're crossing different local authority borders, and that we actually work with authorities outside of West Yorkshire too, so that we can improve transport links. That means things like the Penistone line being improved. It means making sure that we can get people to our stations, so that if you're in the northeast of the West Yorkshire area, Cattle railway station, which provides a connection to York, it's things like this and thinking innovatively that we can do to make sure we deliver for more people. And I want people to get seats on buses and trains that are clean, green and on time. Ultimately, that's what people want. They want to make sure that when they're making these transport decisions, they're thinking of our environment too. So it's a commitment to deliver that, but also not to introduce congestion charges. What congestion charges do is they hit the lowest earners hardest, and they don't change the behaviours of those who are at the top end who can afford to pay. Actually, we need to be changing people's motivations for how they travel and giving them better options for travel, not hitting them in the pocket.
30 seconds, please, Matthew.
Thanks, Neil. Appreciate it. It's also making sure we deliver things like the Northern Forest, better broadband and gigabit broadband across the region, making sure where we have planning in place that we use brownfield land first to regenerate communities, and that we look to make sure we're delivering for people in an open, transparent and accountable way. So the baton is passing, and we have a great new opportunity for devolution in West Yorkshire. And I hope that people will vote for their first preference for me as mayor, but if you're voting for somebody else with your first preference, hopefully give your second preference vote to me as well, so we can deliver for West Yorkshire. And I'll be very brief in saying the favourite place in West Yorkshire, there's a lovely little area called Pompercailey, which is not far from me. It's got a stream that's there. It's near Hetchel Woods. I walk the dog there. I've spent many times just in the nature, reflecting and thinking about just what's going on. It's a good opportunity to do that. And nature and our woodlands provide a brilliant opportunity for people to think, reflect and stay healthy. So thanks, Neil. Thanks, Paul.
Thank you, Matthew, Andrew, Stuart and Bob, who's had to leave us. So anyway, I'm not sure exactly what everyone sees on the screens that's been recorded, but Bob's now teaching a lesson, so he's not still on with us. I'm not sure if Paul introduced ourselves in as much as we're from the King's Church hosting the this virtual hustings in a way. And I just want to thank you on behalf of our church and people for stepping up, stepping forward. We believe that it's important. We pray for those in government, in leadership, of whatever political persuasion they are. And we appreciate those who take responsibility and will put them forward in that, often not being appreciated as they should be. So I appreciate you guys taking the time to come and share your vision. I'm really encouraged from every candidate who's presented. I'm hearing vision. I'm hearing others who love our county, love the place and the people. So I'm just going to close with just a simple prayer. I just want to pray a blessing. Say, God, thank you for those who step up, who step forward. Thank you that they are prepared to give of their time, their energy and their thoughts. We as people want to elect those who will honestly seek the best for the people of this nation. Would you continue to bless us? In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Thank you. I appreciate that. That's just a personal thing. It's not representative of the faith or the beliefs of any of the people who have been sharing with us today, but we believe that they require our support. And it was good in the little chat that we had beforehand. I heard people saying, well, yeah, look, if you get this, I'm going to be behind you. And I was so encouraged just to hear that type of conversation from the candidates who were there. So I don't imagine that part was recorded. I think it would have been such a wholesome thing for people to see these folks who are all standing, having respect for one another, who will honestly challenge other people's views and stand up. And I'd encourage all people to do that, to get involved in politics, to speak out, to protest responsibly when that's appropriate, to take an interest and to go and use your vote. If you're of faith, then pray and seek God for inspiration in who to put in, and whatever it is, just think really carefully, listen to the arguments, and let's all work together for the best of our communities that we've heard so much about. Thank you, everyone.